children. But let's go back 30 years. I was 19 years old. I was dishing ice cream at Baskin-Robbins and cleaning my boss's apartment. I was a college dropout. I walked away from a full-ride scholarship at the University of California in Berkeley. I was an Army wife, no car, no kids, and I was at that time still too young to vote. Oh, that's that voting thing again. I spent a year doing that, and I observed what I was doing. I observed and reflected on how I was feeling. I noticed how involved my husband was in his Army training and how his brain was getting activated by electronics and microwave transmission and radios, and there I was reading mystery stories and eating ice cream. And along about the end of the summer in New Jersey, which lasted about 2 years, I found myself in the library, and for some reason I checked out a chemistry textbook. And what I found on the introductory page of chapter 1 was this: according to convention, there is a sweet and a bitter. According to convention, there is a hot and a cold. According to convention, there is order. In truth, there are atoms and a void. And that is from our famous mathematician, René Descartes. And somehow in the process of reading and reflecting on that essence of, boy, you really don't know how this world is set up if you don't understand atoms and how they work together, I crystallized a plan. And that represented to me the first turning point in my career. I decided to major in the hardest subject I could find. I wanted to learn how far I could push my intellectual capabilities, and I wanted to take every opportunity I could to learn and get a great job when I was done with school and he was done with the Army. And so I went around that corner and I found my first career, an electrochemical process engineer at Tektronix in Beaverton, Oregon. I ended up there a few years later as a manufacturing engineering manager and moved to Eugene as a production manager. Most important thing I learned is I learned in school how to focus. This part of school, not the first part, which I frittered away. But in that second half of my bachelor's degree, I learned how to focus. I found I could do anything I focused on. It might take a while, might not have dinner on the table. Luckily, I made a career of not having dinner on the table, and he still cooks dinner for me. It's wonderful. I encourage you all men to learn how to cook. It will bind your women to you forever. I found that I could do anything I focused on except linear algebra. I found also that I simply could not focus on things that were not important to me or that I didn't want to do. And I've learned to listen for that, I don't want to do this, and to observe that when I'm not focused on something, it's usually an indication that I don't want to do it, and I should just back off and go try something else. This led me to Theory A, every young person should, young and young at heart, that should major in math or a hard science, chemistry, math minor. They should work in manufacturing, learn how things are built, learn how to work with all different kinds of people, and they should aspire to be managers. And I'll tell you, my son must have heard that 42,000 times between the time he was about 5 and 6 and thinking about what he was going to do when he grew up and the time he entered Running Start as a junior in high school. I expounded on it, I asserted it, and I watched as people deviated from it. They didn't take my advice. But it was still my theory until my son, who had entered Running Start, failed calculus the first time, passed it the second time, had self-taught himself basic programming, went to Evergreen College and took a Java programming class that he had no prerequisites for and aced it, and came home and said, you know, but I'd really rather learn Japanese. He graduated with a degree from Evergreen, and you get to label your own degrees when you graduate from Evergreen, and so his is in Japanese language and culture. He got a job 2 months later teaching English, conversational English, in Japan, lived there independently for almost 2 years before he came home, worked for a year at Ace Hardware, learned how to hammer a nail, which neither I nor his stay-at-home father had really been able to teach him. and is now, as of yesterday, admitted as a graduate student in teaching English to speakers of another language at Portland State University in Portland. He didn't study chemistry. He found a direction, he found employment, and he found meaning to his life without hard science. Need a new theory, but he did take calculus. I have to point that out. You should all pass calculus. It's absolutely important when you want to defend yourself in traffic court. I'd be glad to explain that later. So theory B, every young person should find what they love, do whatever it takes to do it, and then figure out how to make a living doing it. I call that the SAM hypothesis because that's Sam's name. So if you like theory A and it works for you, use it, because theory A is only a special case of theory B, the SAM theory. Now I'm going to turn to my professional passion, which, as you may have guessed, will lead to a theory C. Okay, so I was making circuit boards. I was a little engineer, and they thought I was a summer student, and I'd go away after the end of the first summer, and I didn't. And gold was being costed to our products at $35 an ounce, but it was actually costing us $177 an ounce. That was a big surprise for the people who were concerned about profitability when they ran the numbers at the end of the year and reconciled those. And I found that I was really not very happy solving yet another plating process problem. I was intrigued and excited to find ways to get great results, to transform organizational friction, which comes across as whining, moaning, groaning, complaining, and other phrases that you've no doubt heard, converting that into useful energy that's aimed at making progress. If you're going to spend all that energy at work anyway, let's spend it having a good time and making good results. And building both self and team esteem from real success by doing the hard work. Because you don't really break your brain when you work as hard as you can, it just feels like it. I'm a leader. Currently I do this as, and here comes the jargon, Deputy Program Manager for Supply Chain Management Initiatives for the Defense Logistics Agency under contract to the nonprofit corporation Concurrent Technologies Corporation, a 501(c)(3) organization organized in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and I will give a ride in my Mini to anyone who has been to Johnstown. Nobody's been able to take me up on that yet. It's about 2.5 hours and 40 years east of Pittsburgh. We have 25 projects going, each one ranging from $300 to $4 million in level of effort. They run from 6 months to 4 years. There are technical components, project management components, contract law, but the primarily one that I deal in is the human interaction, is getting people organized and getting results. I can talk about our current challenges, but I'm out of time. Suffice it to say that as baby boomers in the area of business information systems, we have left you with the same level of organization and clear structure and efficient operation as in the rest of the world. That's the bad news. The good news is that adds up to a lot of work for people to do for many years to figure out how to take old systems and the work that they do and convert them to new ones that can work at the speed of light and not throw away the business process that actually gets things done. My final theory, every young person should get work experience in a real-world operation, factory, warehouse, store, transportation, service center, it doesn't matter, actually be on the line doing the work of that business. Pay attention to how things really work there, and then how the documentation and the policy say they should work, and observe the differences because that's where the opportunities are. Find an appealing niche and make it your professional passion, and learn to give a 10-minute speech in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I also want to make an announcement that after the session B, the second hour, all panelists will be over in C120 to take individual questions or answer other questions that you might not want to ask here in the open, but wanted to have a one-to-one time with them.